Just disappear, my stepdaughter snarled during a fight. Her mother added, "We'd be better off without you." I said nothing, packed my bags, and left. This morning my phone blew up with their calls. They thought I'd crumble, but I was already far away, starting over. Their words freed me. Now they beg for my return, but I don't look back. My revenge is my new life, where their venom can't reach. Man, where do I even start with this story? I'm sitting here in my new apartment, looking out at the mountains I never thought I'd see again, and honestly, I can't believe how my life flipped upside down in just 3 months. But let me back up and tell you how I got here, because this whole thing reads like something straight out of a soap opera. No cap. So picture this. I'm a 34-year-old woman who thought she'd found her forever family when I married Tom 5 years ago. His daughter Emma was 13 then, just hitting those rough teenage years, but I figured we'd work through it together. Boy, was I wrong about that one. Tom seemed like the perfect guy. Steady job at Ford, loved his Chevy Silverado more than most people love their kids, and he made a mean barbecue on Sundays. We'd sit on the back porch with our Bud Lights, watching Emma play in the yard, and I genuinely thought this was it for me. The problem started small, you know how it is. Emma would forget to do chores I'd ask her to do, but magically remember when her dad asked. She'd roll her eyes when I'd try to help with homework, but hang on every word when Tom explained the same math problem. Classic stepmom stuff, right? I kept telling myself it was normal, that she'd warm up to me eventually. After all, her mom had been out of the picture since she was little, so I figured she was just protective of her dad. But as Emma got older, things got nastier. We're talking passive-aggressive comments that would make a reality TV star proud. Like when I'd cook dinner, she'd wrinkle her nose and go, "This tastes different than how Dad makes it." Or when I'd buy her new Nike sneakers for school, she'd sigh and say, "I guess these will have to do." Nothing I could really call her out on without sounding petty, but it was death by 1,000 paper cuts for real. Tom, bless his heart, was completely oblivious. Whenever I'd try to bring up Emma's attitude, he'd brush it off with, "Oh, you know how teenage girls are," or "She's just going through a phase." Easy for him to say. She was sweet as pie to him. It was like watching Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, except the transformation happened the second he walked in the room. Update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support so far. I know some of you are wondering if I tried family therapy or talking to Tom more seriously about this. Trust me, I tried everything I could think of. But here's where things get really wild. Wait until you hear what happened when Emma's biological mother suddenly came back into the picture. Anyone else ever had an ex show up and completely flip your world upside down? The real drama kicked off about 6 months ago when Emma's biological mother, Lisa, decided she wanted back in her daughter's life. Apparently, she'd gotten clean after years of struggling with addiction and wanted to make amends. Now, I'm all for people turning their lives around, don't get me wrong. But Lisa showing up felt like a wrecking ball through our little family dynamic. Suddenly, Emma had an ally in her corner, and boy did they team up against me. Lisa would pick Emma up for their visits, and I'd catch them whispering in the driveway, both of them glancing at me through the kitchen window. When Emma came back from these visits, she'd be even more hostile than before. It was like Lisa was filling her head with poison about me, though I couldn't prove it. The breaking point came during what should have been a normal Tuesday evening. Tom was working late at the plant, and I was making dinner. Just some simple spaghetti and meatballs. Nothing fancy. Emma came downstairs and saw me cooking, and her whole face just twisted up in disgust. "Why are you always trying so hard?" she snapped, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. "Like, we get it. You want to play house, but nobody asked. You two." I took a deep breath, stirring the sauce and trying to keep my cool. "I'm just making dinner, Emma. Your dad will be hungry when he gets home." "My dad was perfectly fine before you showed up," she shot back. "We didn't need you then, and we don't need you now." That stung, but I'd heard variations of this before. What I wasn't ready for was what came next. Emma pulled out her phone and started texting, and within 10 minutes, Lisa was at our front door. Apparently, Emma had called for backup. Lisa waltzed in like she owned the place, which was rich considering she'd been absent for most of Emma's life. She looked around our living room, the space I'd spent years making into a real home, and wrinkled her nose like she smelled something bad. "So this is where you've been playing mommy," Lisa said, not even bothering with pleasantries. "Emma tells me you've been giving her a hard time." I almost laughed out loud. "A hard time? I asked her to clean her room and do her homework. That's called parenting, Lisa." "You're not her parent," Lisa snapped back, and Emma nodded along like a bobblehead. "You're just some woman who married her father. That doesn't give you the right to boss her around." The whole situation felt surreal. Here I was, defending my right to exist in my own home, while these two stood there acting like I was the intruder. I tried to keep things civil, explaining that I'd been in Emma's life for 5 years, that I cared about her, that all I wanted was for us to get along. But Emma wasn't having any of it. Her face was red with anger, and she looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "You know what?" she screamed, her voice cracking with emotion. "I wish you would just disappear. Nobody wants you here. Just disappear and leave us alone." The words hit me like a physical blow, but what came next was even worse. Lisa, instead of telling her daughter that was inappropriate, just nodded and added, "Honestly, Emma's right. We'd all be better off without you here. You're just making everyone miserable." I stood there in my kitchen, holding a wooden spoon dripping with marinara sauce, and felt something inside me just break. Not break like shatter into a million pieces, break like a chain snapping. All those years of trying, of bending over, backwards, of making excuses for Emma's behavior and Tom's blindness to it. All of it just fell away in that moment. I didn't yell back. I didn't cry. I didn't defend myself or try to reason with them. I just set down the spoon, turned off the stove, and walked upstairs to our bedroom. Behind me, I could hear Emma and Lisa talking in hushed, excited tones, probably celebrating their victory. Update: holy moly, you guys are incredible. The messages of support are overwhelming, and yes, I'm doing okay now. Some of you are asking what Tom's reaction was when he got home. Trust me, that conversation was something else entirely. But first, let me tell you about the most liberating night of my life. Ever packed up 5 years of your life in 3 hours? It's weirdly therapeutic. What would you grab if you were walking away from everything? I pulled out my old college backpack from the closet, a beat-up JanSport that had seen me through some tough times before. Then I started packing, methodically and quietly. I didn't take much, just clothes, personal documents, my laptop, and a few sentimental items. My grandmother's jewelry, some photos from before I met Tom, my favorite coffee, mug that said world's okayest person, stupid little things that felt like anchors to who I used to be. The weird part? I felt calm, like scary calm. While I was packing, I could hear Emma and Lisa downstairs, probably planning their celebration dinner or whatever. I kept waiting for the tears to come, for the panic to set in, but it never did. Instead, I felt this strange sense of relief, like I'd been holding my breath for 5 years and could finally exhale. I wrote Tom a note. Nothing dramatic, just the facts. Emma and Lisa told me to disappear, said everyone would be better off without me. I'm taking their advice. Don't worry about me, I'm fine. I need some time to think. I left it on his pillow along with my wedding ring and house key. Then I loaded up my beat-up Honda Civic, the one Tom always said I should trade in for something more family-friendly, and drove away from the only home I'd known as an adult. It was around 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I had no idea where I was going. I just drove. I ended up at a Motel 6 about 2 hours away, somewhere along I-75. The clerk was this older guy who looked like he'd seen every kind of heartbreak walk through those doors. He didn't ask questions when I paid cash for a week, just handed me the key and said, "Room's got a coffee maker and decent Wi-Fi. Continental breakfast starts at 6. That first night, I sat on the scratchy comforter in room 237, eating vending machine Doritos and drinking terrible coffee, and started making a list on my phone. Not a pros and cons list about my marriage. I was way past that. This was a what do I actually want my life to look like list. Turns out, when you strip away all the noise and expectations and people-pleasing, you remember things about yourself you'd forgotten. Like how I used to love photography before Tom said it was a waste of money, how I'd wanted to travel before Emma's schedule became the center of our universe, how I used to laugh more, worry less, and sleep through the night without wondering if I'd said or done something wrong. Tom started calling around midnight. I watched his name light up my phone screen over and over, but I didn't answer. Then came the texts. At first angry, demanding to know where I was and how I could just leave like that. Then confused, asking if this was about dinner, saying Emma and Lisa had told him we'd had a little disagreement. A little disagreement, that's what they called it. By morning, his messages had shifted to worried. Please just call me back so I know you're safe. I don't understand what happened. Emma's upset. She says she didn't mean it. Classic. Now that there were consequences, suddenly Emma didn't mean it. I turned off my phone and went to get some of that continental breakfast. The waffle maker was broken, but they had decent coffee and bagels that weren't completely stale. I sat by the window, watching truckers fuel up at the gas station across the street, and made another list. This one of all the places I'd always wanted to visit, but never had the chance. Colorado kept coming up in my mind. I'd been there once in college, a spring break trip with friends, and I remembered feeling so small but in a good way, standing at the base of those mountains. Like my problems didn't matter as much when you put them up against something that massive and permanent. So that's what I did. I checked out of the motel, stopped at a Target for some road trip supplies, energy drinks, trail mix, a new phone, charger, and started driving west. It took me 3 days, with stops in Kansas City for barbecue that put Tom's to shame, and a night in a tiny town in Kansas where the sky was so full of stars it looked fake. Update. Okay, last update before. I finished this story because I know you're all dying to know how this ends. The phone calls and messages got intense once they realized I wasn't coming back after a few days. But here's the thing that really gets me. It took them almost 2 weeks to figure out I'd left town entirely. 2 weeks says a lot about how much attention they were actually paying to me, right? The final confrontation happened yesterday, and let me just say, sometimes the trash really does take itself out. Ready for the conclusion? When I finally turned my phone back on in Denver, I had 47 missed calls and about 100 text messages. Tom, Emma, even Lisa had been trying to reach me. The messages were a wild ride. Everything from anger to bargaining to what looked like genuine panic. Tom's messages were the most telling. The first few days were all about how I was being dramatic, how I needed to come home and talk this out like adults. But as time went on, they shifted. Apparently my absence had created some real problems. Emma was acting out worse than ever, probably because she'd lost her favorite target. Lisa had decided she wanted Emma to come live with her full-time, which Tom was fighting. And without me there to handle the household stuff, the grocery shopping, bill paying, appointment scheduling, all those invisible tasks that keep a family running, everything was falling apart. I didn't realize how much you did around here, one message read. Emma keeps asking when you're coming home. She says she's sorry about what happened. Too little, too late, buddy. But the message that really sealed the deal for me came from Emma herself. I know you probably hate me, but Dad's really sad and Lisa's being weird about custody stuff. Can you please just come back? I promise I'll be better. Reading that, I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just a kind of tired emptiness. This kid had spent 5 years making my life miserable, had told me to disappear, and now that there were consequences, she wanted me to come fix everything. The audacity was almost impressive. I'd been in Denver for about a week by then, staying in a decent hotel downtown while I figured out my next move. The city felt alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. People were hiking and skiing and doing all sorts of outdoor stuff that Tom always said was too expensive or too dangerous. I'd bought some basic hiking gear at REI and started exploring the trails around the area. My legs were sore and I was definitely out of shape, but being up in those mountains felt like therapy. I'd also been job hunting, because practical matters don't stop just because your personal life implodes. Turns out my accounting background was in pretty high demand, and I had 3 interviews lined up with companies that offered way more money than I'd been making back home. One of them was even with an outdoor gear company that offered free ski passes to employees. When's the last time Tom's Ford plant offered perks like that? On day 10 of my Colorado adventure, I finally called Tom back. Not because I missed him, or wanted to reconcile, but because I owed him a real conversation after 5 years together. "Where are you?" was the first thing he said. "No hello, or how are you holding up?" "I'm good, Tom. I'm safe. I'm figuring things out." "Emma told me what really happened that night," he said, and I could hear the strain in his voice. "She said some pretty harsh things, but she's just a kid, you know? She didn't mean it." "She's 18, Tom. That's not a kid anymore. And even if she didn't mean it, you know what the real problem is? You weren't there. Again. I was dealing with your daughter and your ex-wife ganging up on me in our home, and you were at work, completely oblivious to what your family was like when you weren't around." He was quiet for a long moment. "Lisa says she wants Emma to come live with her permanently. She's talking about going to court. And what does Emma want? She wants you to come home. She wants things to go back to how they were." I almost laughed. "How they were? You mean with her treating me like garbage and you pretending not to notice? With me tiptoeing around my own house, trying not to upset the delicate balance of your father-daughter relationship? That's what she wants to go back to?" "It wasn't that bad," Tom said, but he sounded uncertain. "It was exactly that bad, Tom, and the fact that you can't see it, even now, tells me everything I need to know." We talked for another hour, going in circles. He promised things would be different, said he'd talk to Emma about respect, claimed he finally understood how hard things had been for me. But I could hear the doubt in his voice, the reluctance. He was saying what he thought I wanted to hear, not what he actually believed. The conversation that really mattered happened the next day, when Emma called me directly. "I'm sorry," she said right off the bat, which surprised me. "I know I've been really mean to you, and I know saying sorry doesn't fix everything, but I really need you to come home." "Why?" I asked. "What's changed?" "Mom wants me to move in with her, and I don't want to. She's different now, but not in a good way. She wants to control everything I do, and she keeps talking about how Dad's house is toxic because of you, but you're not even here anymore and things are worse, not better." I felt a tiny flicker of sympathy for her, but I squashed it down. "Emma, I need you to understand something. You didn't just hurt my feelings that night. You told me to disappear from my own life, and your mother agreed with you. That's not something you can just apologize away." "But I was angry. People say stupid things when they're angry. And now you're scared about your custody situation, so you want me to come back and fix everything. Do you see how that looks from my perspective?" She was quiet for a while. "I guess I never really thought about how you felt. I was so used to it being just me and Dad, you know? And then you came along and everything changed." "I get that, Emma. I really do. But I spent 5 years trying to earn a place in your family, and you spent 5 years making sure I knew I didn't belong. I can't keep living like that." "So you're never coming back?" Her voice cracked a little, and for the first time in years, she sounded like the scared 13-year-old I'd first met. "I don't think so, kiddo. I think you and your dad need to figure out what your family looks like without me in it. And I need to figure out what my life looks like when I'm not constantly trying to prove I deserve to exist in it." After I hung up, I sat in my hotel room for a long time, looking out at the mountains. I felt sad, not for my marriage ending, but for all the time I'd wasted trying to force myself into a family that didn't want me there. 5 years of walking on eggshells, of making myself smaller, of accepting crumbs of affection, and calling it love. The next morning, I put in an offer on a little condo in Golden, about 20 minutes from downtown Denver. It had a view of the mountains and a hiking trail that started basically in the backyard. The outdoor gear company had offered me the job, with a salary that was 30% higher than what I'd been making, and benefits that actually sounded beneficial. Tom called, one more time, 3 days ago, to tell me he was starting divorce proceedings. "I don't want to," he said. "But Emma's custody hearing is next week, and my lawyer says it'll look better if I'm not married to someone who abandoned the family." Abandoned the family. That's how they were spinning it now. "That's fine, Tom," I told him. "Make sure your lawyer knows I'm not asking for anything except half of what we put into the house. I've got my own life now." "I still don't understand how we got here," he said, and he sounded genuinely confused. "I know you don't," I replied, "and that's exactly the problem." So here I am, sitting in my new living room, watching the sunset, behind the Rockies. My divorce papers are on the coffee table next to my laptop, where I've been researching photography workshops and weekend hiking trips. Tomorrow I start my new job, and next weekend I'm driving up to Rocky Mountain National Park to try my hand at landscape photography again. My phone hasn't rung in 2 days. I'm sleeping through the night for the first time in years. I made friends with my neighbor, who's a retired teacher with a wicked sense of humor and an impressive collection of craft beer. We're planning to tackle some of the 14ers this summer. That's Colorado speak for mountains over 14,000 feet tall. I keep thinking about that night when Emma told me to disappear, and Lisa agreed. At the time, it felt like the worst thing anyone had ever said to me. But looking back, they gave me the best gift possible. Permission to leave a situation that was slowly killing my spirit. They thought I'd crumble without them, that I'd come crawling back begging for forgiveness. Instead, I disappeared just like they wanted, and built myself a life so much better than the one I left behind that their phone calls feel like echoes from a past I can barely remember. The revenge they'll never understand is that I'm genuinely happy now. Not making the best of it, happy or grateful for what I have, happy, but actually genuinely excited about my life and my future. They're stuck dealing with the mess they created, while I'm out here living my best life among mountains that make their problems look as small as they really were. Emma's custody hearing was yesterday. I found out through a mutual friend that Lisa got what she wanted. Emma's moving in with her full-time. Tom's alone in that house now, probably eating cereal for dinner and wondering how everything fell apart so quickly. I should feel bad for him, and maybe part of me does. But mostly, I feel grateful. Grateful that their cruelty pushed me toward a life I never would have been brave enough to choose on my own. Grateful that I'm strong enough to disappear when I need to, and smart enough to know the difference between disappearing from their toxicity and disappearing from my own life. Tonight I'm making myself a nice dinner. Nothing fancy, just some salmon and vegetables. And then I'm going to sit on my little balcony with a glass of wine and plan my weekend hiking trip. The weather's supposed to be perfect, and I've got a new camera that I'm dying to test out on some mountain sunrise shots. They wanted me to disappear, and I did. Just not in the way they expected. Sometimes the best revenge is building a life so good that their poison can't touch it anymore. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take people at their word when they show you exactly how little they value you. I disappeared. All right. I disappeared into a life that's actually worth living.